The next item, item 3.1, Garo Holdings Inc., General Plan Initiation Proposal, GPIP. And is this yours, Matt?
Yes.
All right. Can we put some time on the timer for Matt?
I can get done in 60 seconds. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This item before you is a general plan amendment initiation process, which you all have gone through before in the past several years. Mr. Hornstein has submitted a pre-app as part of the GPIP process, and his proposal for the site that I'll show you in a sec proposes a general plan amendment from commercial retail, which is the current designation, to highest density residential. That HHDR designation is our highest land use designation that allows 20 plus units to the acre. Formal project, if he were to move forward, would also require a zone change, a parcel merger, plot plan, EIR, or an MND, just depending on the project. As proposed to the Planning Commission, the project was a 4-story 96-unit condominium complex. I'm sorry, not a condominium, it was an apartment complex. David will share with you some ideas that he has now based on feedback from the Planning Commission meeting. The density is about 25 units to the acre. As I mentioned, March 7th, the Planning Commission looked at it, the applicant provided some background. We had 3 public comment speakers express concerns about the land use change to allow high density apartments. After hearing public testimony, majority of the commission expressed concern about more apartments that was not supportive of the land use change. So this is the site. It's Wildomar Square. You can see in the upper right hand corner. Obviously this area was taken a while ago because now it's built and occupied. So it's just that yellow area with the brown star, the orange star is the project site right behind the shops at Clinton Keith, down to Hidden Springs, and where stable lanes eventually, if it's paved, will connect to Hidden Springs. The general plan existing right now is commercial retail. You can see the existing zoning is RR, so that's where the R3 zone change would have to come in with a formal application. But you can see that from the 07 roundtable that this area, majority of this area has a commercial retail land use designation. This kind of is of a view taken way out so you can see some of the other zoning designations. The square that with the star in there is a project site. And we have the R1 subdivision, the Clinton Keith corridor, which is all commercial, and then the Oxman property, which is kind of a mixed bag of commercial and rural residential zoning. Same with the out view of the general plan designations. The majority of the property in the area, with the exception southerly, is medium density residential, but it's mostly commercial retail. So the commission provided these issues and concerns to the applicant: the loss of retail zone land, loss of sales tax revenue with the land use change, potential jobs, land use compatibility, the density being quite high, and something that we shared before, we have 1,245 apartments and condominiums that have been entitled and approved by the city council that are not being built. And now their 96 units would increase that to over 1,300. So the recommendations is to receive public testimony from the applicant and the general public, discuss the land use and planning issues with the proposed GPA, and provide feedback and direction to the applicant. That concludes my comments.
Is it apartments or condos? They were apartments.
The original plan that was presented to Planning Commission was for apartments.
Okay.
But it has changed, and David will share that with his presentation. David? You're up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me time again. Appreciate it. Great job. Yes, it was apartments, and we wanted to hear the feedback from the Planning Commission and the concerns of just the general community, and then see if we can make any changes before we came to you. So in hearing that, do I have this? Let's see. Oh, got it working. All right. So yeah, we altered it from apartment complex to condo complex. We heard most of those 1,200 units were apartments, and some, of course, were condos that haven't been built, but most of the concerns seem to be around the multifamily component of it. So we also looked at a few things. We're looking at the project as a whole project, and the reason, when I say whole project, we're going to get into that a little bit. We looked at the complementing use between the 96 condos on the subject site as well as the 12 acres along the freeway. And the reason that couldn't be presented as just an entire project was because we were just wanting to get your feedback on just a component of the condos. And so when we go through this, even though we're talking about just the subject site, our intention is to actually have a full, larger project, which we'll get into, which also includes the 12 acres as well, which is along the freeway between this subject site and the freeway. So we wanted to, number one, take into consideration concerns for potential sales tax dollars, because no one ever wants to lose dollars. Concern for too many apartments, which we had discussed. Concerns for assumptions for urban architecture, which we had presented to the Planning Commission and got great feedback of what didn't necessarily fit our area or what we'd like to see. And then also a request for complementing project along with the condo project, which is along the freeway. So with that, let's move to the next slide here. The project would actually include the following. I don't know why it says 90 units, it should have said 96, but okay. 78 two-bedrooms, 18 three-bedrooms. We'll have the following amenities. We're looking to do an upscale location. This is, I know right now we have homeless and all of that, but we'd like to go in there and actually make it very nice and upscale. A recreation area and a pool area with shaded coverage. We'd like to have plenty of parking, which actually is needed to facilitate all residents, and also to take into consideration all environmental concerns that we can to alleviate any expenses or taxation, if you will, on our environment. Even though not all of that is shown, one consideration would be solar panels, which we can get into. Also water, so we're looking for some type of like a Phoenix hydration so that we are impacting Lake Elsinore and just our water district a little bit less. I say Phoenix like not a desert feel with plants, but obviously plants that are going to absorb or require less water. Our project will complement adjacent commercial project as we've done in the other 2 or 4 along the street. But we also heard the community's interest in similar architecture, similar to the barn, and having kind of more of a barn feel to it. So the architect that we chose for this, who lives in Fallbrook and Bondsville, understands that, and we're working with the commercial architect as well. And so again, I don't know if I have a pointer, which it doesn't matter, but so again, we're looking at both of the projects behind both of the other projects that we had done, worked on. And both of the projects, one includes a lot of taxes as well, which we'll get into a little bit, even though that's not what we're here to just discuss. And then our project right there, below the 4 acres is the 96 condos. When we look at the entire project, we're looking at more of kind of a corporate center, if you will. And that corporate center would include, of course, retail sales tax from a 38,000 square foot gym, and maybe if there's room for any type of a government building or something similar to that. We're looking at a medical office building of 36,000 square feet or office. We're looking also at a 6,000 square foot restaurant, and then we're also looking at what we'd love to bring to the community when we look at retail sales tax, and also ultimately some TOT tax and maybe a boutique, upscale boutique, not Holiday Inn-esque, but more upscale for our area, hotel, and to be further discussed when more appropriate. But that is really what we're looking at as an overall plan. Yeah.
Let's wrap it.
First, right. I did something that's not, you can help me with that. You got it? Next slide, if you can do that. I'll show you an indication of our overall site plan for just the 96 units, and then we'll get into some elevations. By the way, the street that we're looking, that we had originally all developed, of course, with the city, is Hidden Springs, and we're still looking to increase that to go through, all the way through, to have 5 lanes, which we had accommodated for originally. Our site plan will definitely include a pool, again, shaded area. These are just some of the tentative plans that we're showing. Obviously, you're seeing a lot of trees there, but when we get into it a little bit more after we get your feedback, we can tailor it to what's going to make a little bit more sense. This was the general feel that we're looking at. A lot of people liked that when we reached out. It had obviously different colors, more of a flare, less of an urban feel, similar to, again, the barn in terms of commercial. And we can also turn our commercial center, or the corporate center, in a similar fashion as well. Here's another example. There you see the pool area. You don't see necessarily the rec area, but those areas have showers, and ultimately we'll have some carports as well, with solar panels on the ports. Okay. And then obviously these are the areas right behind. And I know, again, here's a great example of, we talked a little bit about homeless issues and so forth, and we know that they exist there because we've had to deal with them as well, but we know that you're working with us and other property owners, and so is the Sheriff's Department, so hopefully this will also remedy that a little bit. Obviously the yellow is our subject site, the blue is the contiguous projects that we're looking at, and you can also see that the area where the green area there is somewhat protected, which is a discussion as well for future environment and open space between the two projects. This is kind of an overall look, aerial shot. We have better ones, but this is what we came up with. And so I'll share this with you. Obviously we've been involved with about 75% of kind of the new retail and commercial projects, as you guys know, throughout the years, 20 of them. And I know there's another retail project coming up on Stable Lanes in Clinton Keith. But as you know, there's going to come a point with retail that as much as we want that, we have to accommodate it and figure out ways to take advantage of what retail we can absorb and create, together with a complementing project that works for the city, as well as someone who's willing to invest, tens of millions of dollars to do it. We want to do it in the right way, and we would really like to do it with that boutique hotel that everyone's interested in. We believe we can. We look forward to presenting that comparison when it makes sense to do so. We appreciate, I obviously appreciate your time, and would love any general feedback that you guys have to give us direction on whether or not maybe this is something we should proceed with or not. And that's the end of, I think that's close to the end of my presentation. I said some of this last time, we're working on added value based on our experience, knowledge of business and residential community, and we want to provide a project that, again, all of us can be proud of, not take 10 years. I said that one out loud. But no, in all seriousness, just kind of get through it, work with whoever we need to, and get this done. But hear the community when we do it. So with that, we're definitely open to your feedback, and we appreciate your time.
Very good. We're going to have some public comment before we go back to council comments. So first off, Joseph Morabito.
Good evening again. I made some notes. I'm a property, let's see if I can read my notes. Property owner rights guy, also a general plan use map guy. So usually my position on a GPIP is just say yes. I liken it to asking a person if you can ask that person out on a date. Hey, can I ask you out on a date? Yeah, go ahead and ask. Want to go out? No. So it's his right to come back with something, and so at this point it's so preliminary. Okay. All right. So, okay. Now we have enough apartments at this point in time. And those apartments, notice I wrote this before they were upgraded to condos, those apartments are really packed in compared to others that have been proposed. There's like 96 units and like a postage stamp. 4 acres. All right. Still, if a more modest group of apartments, where did I go, were proposed, as part of a larger multi-use project, that might be different. And so we saw the other part of the project mentioned, but guess what? That's not what the GPIP's about. So if he brought it back as one big thing, and that's part of it, multi-use, I kind of get that. And then my last note on this is a change from apartments to condos, when it's the same number of units on the same number of acres, reminds me of the rows under another name.
Gary, Andrew?
Yes, back in 2005, we had Wildomar Land Development Review. We reviewed plans for the county, gave the opinion to Planning Commission and to the supervisors. A project in that area came up, it's 4 or 5 acres. I cannot remember if it was this one, I don't think so. But they wanted to put in tons of apartments. And we suggested that they put in 1-story senior homes, private gate community, the whole bit. It went to Planning Commission, was approved. Went to the Board of Supervisors, was approved. But obviously it never went in, so something happened. But I think that makes one thing we do not have in this community is senior housing, period. And I believe we need to start putting some in because we're all getting up there. I'm 62 and just found out from my granddaughter I'm going to be a great-grandfather at 62. So, I think I'm getting old and, it's getting real old now. But we need to really think about this and think about what we need to put in. And I think senior housing is areas we need to start working on. We have tons of apartments. Condos are better than apartments because they will bring in tax revenue. Apartments do too in one big lump. But I just think senior housing would be better. That's my personal opinion. Thank you.
All right, would the applicant like to rebut? Probably get some council questions at that point.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Gary, and Gary's always been, I've known Gary for many years, and he's had a lot of good ideas. I think one thing to consider when looking at a project is, demand. Maybe in 05 it didn't go through because it didn't make sense to go through. And so, it's kind of like a lot of these apartment projects, wherever they've been approved, it's a great idea sometimes, but as you guys know, there's a difference between getting something approved and actually getting it approved and building it. And I take nothing away from Gary. Gary and I know each other again for many years. Actually, we served on that committee, I think, right? About 15 years ago or however many years ago, the roundtable. But from a realistic standpoint and from a vision of the city standpoint, I'm just a portion of everyone. That's all I am. But what I do believe is that in order to move forward with a project that's going to make sense overall, how do we do it in a great way? How do we do it in a quality way? How do we do it where we can please the majority of the people in the community? How can we serve the needs? How can we build the infrastructure? And how can we provide the ongoing solid national tax that the city's going to rely on that isn't necessarily going to be taken away from the state during our next recession. And I would love to help the city out with senior housing where it makes sense to do so. But from a financial standpoint, we looked at this project, we heard about the multifamily, not so many desires there, And we'd like to come up with something that we know is gonna pencil so that we can actually move forward. And since it's so early, this is a wonderful process that Matt and his team put together, and Dan, for us to get feedback from you, so that we know that we're starting something that we could end up with a finish line. And we'd like to provide that for the city and everyone. That's my rebuttal.
Okay. Council questions? Open up down that end. Marcia?
Well, being in real estate, condos are better than apartments, but in my opinion, we don't need either one. We have how many units sitting that nobody wants to build? Approved already?
1,250.
1,250. People coming here to live still like the rural life. They don't want to be on top of each other. I didn't see a garage on any one of these carports, but no garages. I just think it's too many, too close together. You're gonna have 300-400 people on 4 acres. And that's probably a low guess number. If you have 2-bedroom and 3 bedrooms, counting the kids and the adults, they're gonna be packed in there. I like the idea of the surrounding area, but I just can't see that 4 acres holding that many people.
So, I'm not so much opposed to the condos, but I'm sure, Tom, there's no way to, we're looking at this GPIP, but then you're saying also the other project, but there's no way to like prove that the other project would also happen, right? So that's why I'm just kind of concerned.
Well, to answer that question, we wouldn't do one without the other.
Okay.
We just brought it in this way because one of them didn't need a zoning change and the other did.
Oh, okay.
So, and when we suggested that, the reality is we couldn't bring into this format both projects because one requires that. So we'd like to really present and move forward with both and get feedback, on parking and
The garages.
and whatnot, yeah.
Right.
So that's what we're
Right.
looking at.
Okay.
David, yeah, I'm on the same page as Marcia. We see 1,250 apartments / condos. Joseph kind of said it best. It's like taking a rose and calling something different. It's still, in my eyes, one of the same. I know you purchase it. I get that. I also know that condos can turn into apartments. Pretty, if you're not selling them, you can, I don't like the idea of changing the zone from what it currently is. I had my head back thinking if I liked the idea of that part of Clinton Keith. That looks, I think we're doing really good. I mean, we got Wildomar Square right there, do I want to see condos right there backed up next to, a hotel or a possible city building, so,
As opposed to what it is today, right?
which is nothing, right?
No, it's not nothing, there are trailers there. And
Yeah, well,
right?
I would say,
Which is okay.
I would like to have something that's not condos, apartments.
Okay. I'm here,
It's just too many.
Too many.
Let me ask you a question. Is there a way to combine it with the place towards the front, towards Clinton Keith? Because I know that piece of property is right at the front. Couldn't it have all gone as one area? Or are they not willing to sell out
They
to
don't-
make it a larger location?
Well, I think the way we were looking at this honestly was, we really wanted the community corporate center is what we wanted to focus on. And then we looked at the 4 acres that weren't gonna be on the freeway. And we thought if they weren't gonna be on the freeway, and we really believe in the future that you're not gonna most likely see retail. I was gonna say I'm not an expert on it, but in this area, I really feel confident that we're not gonna see the retail in that 4 acres.
Behind the center.
Behind the center, behind our other center. So with that, the 5, and obviously a lot that has to happen too to build the roads. And our real bigger vision for the city, and again, Dan and Gary had talked to me a little bit about this, but also to ultimately connect, if it makes sense, stable lanes to Clinton Keith. So you're really looking at the bigger vision of that. Is it too many apartments? Well, if it is, then let's have a discussion. What we were looking at today was if we combine these two projects conceptually, where one of them had to require a zone consistency change for the condo component of it, is the feedback, let's sit at the table and talk about how we can make that work from a shading, from a parking, from a code, from an environmental standpoint that works for everyone, or maybe it doesn't look that dense, if you can even do that, David, versus if you look at the whole project, you know, condos is completely an out. So I was looking for feedback for if it's not completely an out, but we're not happy the way you've necessarily designed it, come back and as a big picture, which would include the commercial component, which would help the city, I'm open to it. That was the type of feedback we were looking for, or that's not gonna work regardless, David, and that's what we're here for, to kind of hear.
I'm not 100% opposed to what you have brought forward. I think it would obviously need to be packaged together. I'd want to see that. Mark, what you brought up about the density piece, I agree with. I feel like it's already congested there anyway, with what we have there. So I'd imagine it's going to get worse. And connecting stable lanes to Clinton Keith, you know, would that be done with this project? I think I'd prefer to keep it commercial. I'm not overly opposed to what you have. I think we need to be less, in my eyes. And I remember talking to you at the ribbon cutting. Are you still looking at doing a parking something?
Yeah, our original, with the apartments that we had showed earlier, we had a park and ride, but we were just looking at a couple of things. One, when we heard that the community didn't like multifamily, we were going to go with the condo component,
Okay.
and create more of like a rec center and just more facilities that are going to beautify the area. We kept the count very similar, very close in terms of the unit counts. I think we're off by 4, something like that. And we hadn't checked in yet with the RTA or any of these other facilities to do a park and ride. I think that we were looking more for just, hey, you know, conceptually, if you brought it together and you were able to make it a little bit, you know, whatever, more dense or follow XYZ, I think we can get behind it. Oh, by the way, is there anything else you can do, perhaps, as one of the comments, from a park and ride facility, whether it's on the condo component or it's even on the other commercial component? Can you incorporate that somehow? And if you can, now we're looking at this again as a whole, which I'd love to do. I'd prefer to look at it as a whole.
What is the line of sight to the freeway from there? Can you see that building? If it was seen there, could you see those buildings from the freeway?
No, you couldn't see them.
Because I was, oh, is it down, lower?
It's much
Oh,
lower.
okay, I was just gonna say, the only other thing you could have done is swapped out and made a nice hotel over there, but if it's not gonna be visible, you know, hotels like to be seen,
Yeah.
I've just heard of.
Yeah, and this is, and just so you know, this is something I've been working on for not just a month. I've been working on this for 4 years. You're just hearing about it today. I've had to get this properties under contract. I've had to work with these people. And I've also been working with the hotel and the gym. And so we actually have a bona fide project, not for condos. We have a bona fide project as a whole to work with you guys. And so it's just hard to present completely when you're getting feedback on just a component of it.
Yeah, I'm the same thought, the condos and the apartments don't work there, it's just too much. And I'm also the same thought that putting retail there isn't gonna work anyway. Who's gonna drive up the street to go to retail that's on that side? Now, they might go on the other side where the restaurant, where the hotel is, where all those different things is, but I couldn't see somebody purposely going back in there if they don't even know it's there and use that as a retail spot. I don't know why it was suggested retail in the first place, kind of an oddball. Unless it was, like I said, connected with the places that are, let's see, they're southwest, that section there that goes all the way out to the street. That's the only reason it would be viable that way as a commercial retail.
You know, actually, the reason it was considered retail, I think, and maybe Tom, you can chime in, but when originally it wasn't retail, and it was easier when the city became a city to adopt a general plan for the county of Riverside, because it was just easier to have an overlay and then figure out what type
Right.
of consistencies. So it was easier to do that when we started versus trying to make any changes to the general plan prior to becoming a city.
No, I totally understand that part. I just was odd that it would have been retail anyway. I get why they did it, but it just doesn't seem like a good place to have retail in the first
I
place.
agree with you.
Condo or something like that does make sense in that area, but it's just too packed in. It's gonna be too rough.
So, David, I have some questions for you. You know, you've got, what looks like 3 or 4 properties there, and then there's one more mobile right there on Stable Lanes Road.
Yeah.
Is that person staying there? Are they
Yeah,
part of the
so-
project for a particular reason? Are they opposed or in favor
No,
of this?
I didn't approach them, but I do know them. And I don't know if they're here or not, but they own that piece as well as the other piece on the other corner, if you will, the southwest corner of Stable Lanes. And,
The other trailer over there?
yeah, well, they own one trailer and then they own the other home, I believe. I don't know if it's
Oh.
a trailer.
Almost straight across the
On the
street.
southwest, yeah. There's a
Okay.
house.
Mayor, if I could just add something real quick. Those 2 properties to the west of this one will be coming to you for a consistency zone change to C1CP in the next couple of months.
Oh,
We have an application in now,
so they're looking to go commercial as well.
correct?
I mean, that's always my concern, is what's the zoning looking like beside it, and when we have if we were to go even near this density, right next to rural residential, that's my worry, is what are those people right next door when they're in rural residential? I mean, I think they know that this is coming, but, you know, for me, I look at condos, I think they're great, I think that we need more condo products in our city if you're actually gonna build them. I think that's the big question. We've got 96 condos right behind us here that have never been built. They're approved, and they've been approved since, I think, pre-incorporation almost. So, to me, I don't see a problem with the condos, I just think the density's a little high. I don't like the idea of it just being covered parking. I do like the idea of if they're gonna be condos with garages. You know, I'm a big fan of electric cars, and it's really hard to do that underneath carports, you know, unless you're putting power in every carport. So that's something I'd be looking for, somewhere where you can actually plug your cars in someday. Not that everybody's doing that, but that's, a lot of people are on that path.
That stuff.
Right, and they have stuff to put in their garage too. But of course, Dan will tell you, most 2-car garages and most of these condo units, it's usually a car. So that's where you're usually end up with parking issues. So, you know, my opinion, the density's too high and we need garages. That's my feedback. I agree with you where it's at. It's really difficult as a sell as retail. And so I can see why you're coming forward with this. As a whole project, I think there's some merit here. As by itself, it's tough. So, and I get why you're coming forward just this piece, because we're not GPIPing the whole thing. We're only GPIPing that one little spot. So, I don't know. I can see some progress here, especially if the surrounding communities are going to be going towards, you know, retail as well, or eventually going that zone change. But those are some of my comments. Further council comments?
That's basically it, is the density, and are these 4-story units all
So I have a
one
problem.
unit? Is it 4 stories, or is there 2 units that
Yeah.
are 2-story? The configuration is hard to kind of figure here. Or are they all
They are-
single-story?
No, yeah, so there is 4 stories, and we checked to see if the fire truck was, that was actually.
That's, a 4-story is okay, but I'm wondering, is a 1 unit 4 stories?
No.
Like, these are 3 stories, these apartments, well, these apartments behind us
No,
are 3.
there's the
You know?
the larger 3 bedrooms, and then there's 2 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms.
So they're inside single-story.
Inside single story.
I like that idea.
Yeah, because that's also good for, you know. But Bridget, you're, now I feel I've heard, here, if you wouldn't mind just giving a little feedback, you're kind of going over that, maybe I missed it, I'm sorry.
I said I wasn't opposed to the condos, and I think Tim hit it on the head. I mean, if it's not going to be retail, or it's going to be tough to be retail there, you have to do something with the property. And so tying it in and do something with it makes sense, but maybe just add in the other comments, do the covered garages and do something that way.
You're saying if it was brought back as a whole with the other project, which
Right.
made more sense for the city from a sales tax
'Cause-
standpoint, and we worked on features and just correct me if I'm wrong, but we worked on features where we had perhaps a little bit less density, whatever we could live with, as well as covered. And we went through all of the correct codes, and it worked well with the street and the other component. Then that's something that maybe you would say you could be open to looking at?
Right, exactly, because my original comment was that, I know we couldn't force you to do the other project, so if you did one project, I was concerned that, then would the other project happen?
I wouldn't do one without the other, yeah. So,
Eventually,
huh?
eventually.
I wouldn't, no.
Sorry,
I
just
still
get back
have
to
the
the
old
old
sign.
joke, I know.
I put a 1, 0.
David,
You saved the signs, didn't you?
David, do you plan to build this project?
Yes, yeah, we
That
build, that's a
makes a
great
big
question.
difference.
It actually is a great question. We plan on building it, we hopefully plan on holding it.
You're not
And we
getting it
also-
ready to be built by
Most of
somebody
it
else?
anyway, and then on the condos, we can generate the sales as they come on. But yes, we thought this made more sense as a big picture, and before we get heavily invested, we wanted to get everyone's feedback. So,
Well, land use is yours. I kind of feel, you're in the market to make money, you know the need is there, right, for condos?
I believe so.
You're willing to risk your money on it, so.
Is that your apartment, is that your condo on the front middle right there?
Yeah.
So where you're gonna move
It
to?
might be in the parking lot.
That's his house.
They'll be in the trees, David, in the trees with all the homes. I mean, I think that's the other big thing is that we bring development to that area. The homeless are gonna get pushed out of those trees, and I think that's a good thing. What does it look like in those trees when you develop this lot? Is there fencing that would be added? What other?
So I think what we would do is, if we really are open to looking at the bigger picture, is we would sit with, obviously, the environmental groups that we needed to come up with some kind of a maintenance program that they'd be searching for. Obviously, we need to do that and protect that. And in the past, we've actually been dealing with the homeless ourselves, as you know, a few times.
Right.
Which is probably why they made their way where they did. But yeah, we're looking for a longer term plan of maintenance. We want to upkeep it, we want to preserve it, obviously, and come up with a solution that, isn't necessarily going to take that long, but it's going to be done correctly. So absolutely, we want that to be
It'd be nice to have it ready to walk through it and.
I would love to do that.
Yeah,
If they're open to
nice
that.
open space area.
We would love to do that. With Dan's help and Gary's help, maybe we could achieve that. We're very open to that. And Dan and Gary would know better, but
And besides the park, you're right, I was gonna say a farmer's market.
yeah, I mean, the whole area could open up. I mean, to have all of that there, you lose your homeless issue, you'd have, at least in that area. And then now you have the street widened the way it has been. You'd have some of your infrastructure for stable lanes, which could get you, to, maybe not all of it, right? But some of it frontage-wise towards Clinton Keith. And you definitely would make the environmental area happy in terms of someone actually maintaining it. And you'd provide more parking as in general, and perhaps that ultimately becomes more of a medical office, maybe even government building someday, or something like that. It probably could foster that.
All right, everyone got all their comments in? Marcia, want to read the motion, or want me to?
I can read it. This would be my motion, that I move that the applicant may initiate the process of the proposed general plan amendment if the applicant chooses to do so, but the applicant should be fully aware of the concerns expressed by the council here tonight. And I think you've listened. I hope you've heard. So that is my motion, if there is a second. Second.
Bridget got the second? Any opposed? So moved.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you. Thank you.